Good day, two-wheel friends. Zack here with RevZilla, and welcome to another episode of Daily Rider, where we learn about motorcycles as we ride. Our guest today is Honda CBR1000RR-R SP. That is Honda's version of a race-ready superbike with lights and blinkers and mirrors for your road-going pleasure, for sale for $29,000. Triple R, huh? Is that much different than the double R? It's been around for years now? Well, don't you worry, we'll talk about what the R's mean, not to mention the SP, and of course we'll find out if 186 claimed horsepower gets you to work faster than a normal motorcycle. Green flag drops in 3, 2, 1, go! Okie dokie, everybody, almost ready to get going here. Before we do, a friendly reminder that this episode of Daily Rider is brought to you by Michelin. Did you know that Michelin created the first motorcycle tire back in 1897 and has been innovating in the world of two wheels ever since? More to the point, Michelin is a fan of Daily Rider. So the next time you need new tires for your street bike, your dirt bike, your showroom superbike, whatever it may be, you can click on the link in the description of the video, shop Michelin products, and you too will be supporting Daily Rider. Okie dokie, everybody. CBR1000RR-R Fireblade. Fireblade's got to be like the coolest name for a motorcycle ever. Fun fact, I heard a story about the conversation about calling it a Fireblade in the United States at American Honda years ago in the early 90s, and everyone thought it was silly, stupid even. Sounded like a Star Wars spoof or something. I happen to think it's pretty cool. But then again, I happen to think Star Wars is pretty cool. So, you know, maybe my opinion's not worth much. Let's start at the engine here, shall we? This is a 999cc inline 4, as is pretty typical for Japanese superbikes. This engine's claim to fame is that the bore and stroke ratio matches that of the 2018, anyway, Honda RC213V MotoGP bike. So it's a much larger bore and a much shorter stroke than the previous edition of this bike. While we're on the topic of MotoGP, you see these little winglets here? Can you see them? These little winglets built into the side of the bike here allegedly produce comparable downforce to the 2018 MotoGP RCV as well. So, you know, some sort of MotoGP trickle down in this bike, at least a little bit anyway. That's probably one of the reasons anyway that Honda felt it was acceptable to put an HRC sticker on this bike. Honda Racing Corporation, which of course is a storied research and development lab and responsible for many a great race bike over the years. On the topic of racing, there's a lot of sort of European touches to this bike. You got your sort of tubular steel subframe, which is sort of a Euro thing. You've got this Akrapovic exhaust, which is made in Slovenia, I believe. You've got Pirelli tires, which are Italian. You've got Öhlins suspension, electronically adjustable here, you can see, that are made in Sweden. And you got Brembo brake calipers that are made in Italy. So yeah, it's a sort of a global cosmopolitan feel for a Japanese superbike, and not necessarily typical of what Honda usually does. Aside from that, pretty typical big 1000cc superbike from Japan. In general, I don't know. You got big 330mm brake rotors that are burly. Yeah, high spec suspension, tires, brakes, all that stuff. One interesting note: rubber brake lines. Which, are there rubber brake lines on a $30,000 superbike with Brembo brakes and Öhlins suspension? I don't know. The world's full of mysteries, people. We don't know all the answers. But we'll talk more about braking performance later, of course. One last little tidbit of information that I'll give you as we start the ride here is that there's no key. You'll notice no key tumbler up on top here. The key is down here. Actually, it's a little button that I'm going to press. And this big old TFT is going to come to life. And the reason that Honda did that, one of the reasons anyway, is to put the ignition mechanism over here so that this whole area of the frame was free for airflow for the big mono nostril up front. Little sort of fun fact that I learned about this bike that I thought was kind of neat. All right, let's fire it up, shall we do? Yeah, some performance lurking in there, you might say. I'm proud to say I scrubbed these Pirelli tires pretty good too. I went to a track day. You can see I got my tire pressure on the tank, and I got a little GoPro mount. If I've done half of my job, the GoPro footage from the racetrack will be on my Instagram feed. You can look it up if you so choose and actually hear this thing sing. But for now, let's ride this mamma jamma to work, shall we? Alrighty. Show is spicy, isn't it? This paint job, by the way, Designed by the same guy that did the CBR900 way back when, in the early 90s. You know, they got the lineage is coming out of every doorway on this bike. All right, let's talk about some specs, shall we? As we watch the TFT screen dim as we go into this bridge, which is kind of cool. I will mention to you the price, which is actually $28,900. I believe I rounded up to 29 or 30, which I guess I feel like is fair. There's 186 claimed horsepower on tap and 83 foot-pounds of torque. That is down from the European version. Yes, I know. How am I even riding to work with less than 215 horsepower? It's hard to know, but I'm doing it. And let's see what else. Fuel capacity is 4.3 gallons, which is decent. And with that fuel tank full on the Daily Rider scales, the CBR1000RR-R SP weighed in at 446 pounds. Moving on to ergonomics. It is not a very comfortable bike. You shouldn't have been expecting it to be, nor was I. One of the things I think is interesting about the ergonomics is the updates that were made from the outgoing or previous generation, I should say, RR1000RR. This is much more aggressive. The foot pegs are 0.8 of an inch higher, I believe, 1.7 inches farther back. The top of the gas tank is a couple inches lower so that you can tuck in better. The handlebars are wider. They're also set farther forward. They're a little bit lower, I believe. All this is to say, it's an extremely aggressive riding position. Maybe not extremely. It's a very aggressive riding position, and one that sort of makes sense considering the purpose of the bike, which is to go around a racetrack as quickly as possible. In fact, Honda has departed from some of its theories about how to make a 1000cc superbike for the street. This bike, I forget what the exact line is. It's something like there's a singular focus on circuit riding or something like that. So Honda was very clear that this bike has made no real compromises for the street. It doesn't pretend to do anything that will make you happy on your ride to work. It's for going around a racetrack, and that's the end of the story, which is uncomfortable, but also kind of cool. I actually think I might have forgotten to mention the seat height, which I believe is 32.7 inches, which is not particularly notable or exciting, only to say that it's a little high. I would say it feels even higher than that, just because the bike is a little bit intimidating from a rider triangle perspective, though it's plenty approachable if you're under 6 feet tall. Okie dokie, we are basically at idle here in first gear, and we're gonna go out onto this freeway, and we're gonna stay in first gear for now. Yep, sorry, not yielding to that person. All right, so we're still in first gear. Now we're going 45 or 50 miles an hour. No big deal, really. But since it revs to 14,500 RPM, we can just kind of leave it in first gear if we want to. And here we go. Now we're going down the highway at 70. You can go even faster if you like. In fact, you can go up to 99 miles an hour in first gear. And obviously, this isn't necessarily the most efficient way to get down the road or the quietest, but I do think it's interesting that you can ride all the way to work and break the speed limit if you want to in just about every part of the world without even going to second gear. Crazy. All right, let's give some upshifts here. There we go. That's a little better. We'll go up to sixth gear and we'll start cruising along. Now when we go 70 or 75 miles an hour, we're around 5,000 RPM. At this rate, the bike is just sort of loping along. It's like when you see a greyhound on a leash just walking along through the park. It's just loping. Absolutely not even close to breaking a sweat. And actually the engine's dead smooth. It's pretty comfortable like this from an engine vibration standpoint. You'll be sick of sitting in this position before the bike is sick of going the speed, that's for sure. And provided you don't leave the bike in first gear all the time, your gas mileage, I think you'll find, will be around the mid-30s. That's what I saw. If you're really gentle, you might get close to 40. So with a 4.3 gallon gas tank, you'll be able to go 150 miles or so. And like I said, I think you'll be ready for a break on your body at the time, or perhaps even before you need gasoline. It's not like it's a super impressive range or anything, but I actually think it's respectable considering, I'm trying to think of other bikes we've tested it. I feel like the Aprilia Tuono always comes to mind. Yamaha MT-10, especially the previous generation, just sort of famously bad on gas. You have to get gas every 110, 120 miles. It's not that uncommon actually in the sport or sport naked category. So I don't know, for this thing to go 150 or 160 miles on a tank, there's a whiff of Honda about it, isn't there? Okie dokie. As we pull up to this stoplight here, I'm going to put the bike into A1 mode, where wheelie control is engaged, and we'll open the throttle a little bit and see what happens when that valve opens at 7,000 RPM. We're going wide open. Here we go. Sorry about that. Normal service has been resumed. Wheelie control, for what it's worth, though I have it turned way down, it seems, down farther than I remembered or expected, is informed by an inertial measurement unit, or IMU, which also on this bike talks to an ABS system and traction control, and even the electronically controlled steering damper, which is tucked down in front here. So it's a complicated but state-of-the-art, sort of typical system for a superbike, and I find when you do need the wheelie control to work, if you don't turn it down as I did, it is quite good. Back to matters aside from wheelies, the mirrors on this bike are quite good, quite smooth. They give me a lovely view of the inside of my elbow. I would like to point out, however, instead of just complaining that the mirrors are in the wrong place and I can't see behind me, that one of my lovely Daily Rider viewers pointed out that they kind of like when the elbow blocks the mirror, because then people's headlights don't hit you in the face. And if you want to see behind you, you can tuck your elbow out of the way. This isn't something that I necessarily agree with or represent with. I would prefer the mirrors were just sort of good to begin with, but I, again, appreciate the point of view and the perspective on that. So maybe you're a person who wants to sort of have your elbow able to block some headlights from behind. Just a fun note from a viewer, I suppose. Okie dokie. Let's stretch my back a little bit, and we're going to dive into the Round Town Challenge. Is that what we call it? Whatever. Stop sign challenge. Low speed maneuverability, of course, is not the forefront of the CBR1000RR-R SP's, resume. But we'll see how we do here. Geez. Oh, a little wobbly, but I did it. And in general, the CBR is quite agreeable at doing this kind of thing, considering what the bike is made for, because it's, again, there's a whiff of Honda about it. The throttle response is pretty good, fairly smooth. The clutch engagement's easy to predict. It's just sort of relatively calm and reserved below 7,000 RPM. Another thing I'd like to mention while riding around town real slow here is the quick shifter, up and down, which is pretty typical for a bike like this. But I find this one especially good. Really, really good. And having ridden this bike on the track a couple times, I really liked it on the track as well. It's just great at high RPM. The auto blip is right on the money. You can hammer down through a couple downshifts really quickly back to back, and it doesn't freak the system out. And like the perfect lap around a racetrack, there's no quick shifter that's perfect, but this one stood out as being really, really refined, and one of the best ones I can remember testing recently. So props to Honda for that. I mentioned earlier that sort of valve in the exhaust that opens at about 7,000 RPM, and that's really not the only thing that's going on. The bike just really comes alive at that RPM, and it turns from a motorcycle into a super bike, and really, starts to deliver performance that's fairly hair-raising. It's a double-edged sword, because it's strange not to be able to access that performance anywhere except there, where you just really don't want to go there on the street, frankly. But I do appreciate that it's a true Jekyll and Hyde kind of motorcycle, because you can trundle around town like this and it's genuinely quiet and smooth and unassuming, even though there's all that vicious power on tap at the top of the revs. All right, Lover's Lane, and the passenger accommodations on the RR-R SP. Any guesses? Yeah, not good. I almost wonder if Honda shouldn't just put why even put passenger pegs on there? I don't know. I know, it's Honda. They're a practical company, and you can put a passenger back there. It's a thin seat relatively, and the foot pegs are super high, and as my lady always points out, you feel real perched up and kind of vulnerable back there. So practically it's not good, but you can do it if you want. And the only reason I bring up the single seat thing is I don't know, would it not add a little bit to the mystique of the RRR SP if it was like no passengers allowed? I don't know, just a thought. It doesn't really matter one way or the other. Right into the twisty road section here, which is, you might say, the RRR's forte, and as you would imagine, it's perfectly good at this. In fact, it's so good at it that I question even purchasing a bike that's this good at going through corners to ride through corners on the street. I gotta say, anything that you should or even can do on ooh, hey, suburban jack move, on public roads, this bike will do it without breaking a sweat. It is lovely to feel the bike settle into a corner and feel the brakes work when you pinch on the lever and feel the tires stick, and it does all the things a sport bike should. It responds well to body English hanging off the bike, stuff like that. But I think that, like I said, even on an aggressive street ride, you'll find yourself wishing that you had more open pasture for these ponies to gallop, One piece of practicality I do appreciate on the daily ride is the adjustable suspension. I told you how I went to A1 earlier, which is one of the 3 semi-automatic modes, meaning the suspension sort of reacts to the road as it goes under you. There are also 3 manual modes in which you can set damping parameters to be non-semi-active if that's your preference. I've been playing around with the automatic modes because those are the sort of fanciest ones. If I go to A3 mode, which is labeled as rain on the dash, I'm not sure you can see that. This is the softest setting, I believe, that the suspension offers, and so it loosens up the damping a little bit, and it does make the ride a little bit more plush. Granted, the spring rates are still what they are, and they're fairly stiff for the sake of sport riding, but it relaxes the muscles in the RRR suspension just a little bit, and it makes it feel a little bit more tame, which is kind of nice. Out of the twisty road section onto surface streets. We can open the throttle and okay, we gotta shut it down. Gotta shut it down. Okay, doke. Approaching a red light, we can talk about brakes. And these brakes, woo! Let me do a little stoppy, which I didn't remember the bike doing, to be honest. But the brakes are very sharp. I talked about those rubber lines early on, and there's a tendency by people in the motorcycle world, myself included, to see steel braided lines on a bike and think, wow, those brakes must be good. And to see rubber lines on a front brake system and think, oh, those brakes must not be all that good. But it's really, a braking system is the sum of its parts, and this system has a lot of good parts in it. The rubber lines don't really hurt the bike that much. The brakes are awesome. I rode at the racetrack. I hammered the brakes. I didn't get them to fade. I was impressed in general. On the flip side, you got something like your Yamaha MT10 SP has steel braided brake lines, but the brake is really underwhelming, the front brake on that bike, even though it has a good master cylinder ostensibly and pretty beefy calipers and that kind of thing. So yeah, you can't judge a braking system by its brake lines, by its cover, so to speak. All right, time to go. One thing I did want to address about this bike is the engine, which is a typical inline 4-cylinder engine, which is sort of on the surface the same as a CBR1000RR or a Kawasaki ZX10 or a Suzuki GSX-R 1000. They all have their own personality, and this one is very mighty. It has a real sting to it when you rev it up, as I've mentioned a few times, and not only that, it makes this really serious noise. Like, you can hear the fuel and air getting sucked into the engine and compressed and exploded, and it fires out of the pipe with this amazing shriek, and it feels special, and it sounds interesting. And I think that that's more than people often give inline 4s credit for. And it's worth mentioning that this bike is expensive, and it seems like it has an engine that other bikes have, but it feels different at full chat. It really does. Alrighty, we got one more red light here, and we can talk about that dash Mahoozit, which is very sophisticated. There's lots of stuff to look at. This analog, faux analog tack, excuse me, is a setting that I selected in these menus here, which are expansive and interesting. Especially for Honda, you can customize so much stuff, bar type tachometers and all sorts of kind of, I don't know, weird little nuances that usually Honda doesn't seem to care about, frankly. You can go in and mess with the suspension modes. You can see how sort of, I don't know, complicated and nuanced and specific you can be with all this stuff. It's a very deep, expansive dash with a lot of settings, and I kind of appreciate that because it's a complex bike that has a lot of capability, and they offered that in the dash as well, which again, kind of an un-Honda thing to do, but I don't know, I appreciate it. So, to answer the question, what the heck does that third R even mean, or the SP? Well, SP denotes the fancy suspension, for what it's worth. And the third R in the triple R is quite meaningful, actually. As I talked about, it's a whole set of ergonomic changes. It's a whole set of the wheelbase is longer, the center of gravity is taller, the engine internals are more titaniumer. It's a very comprehensive overhaul, and it's a very serious motorcycle compared to a 1000RR, as we will find out whilst we take our dirt road shortcut, which of course you gotta know, can this bike go down a dirt road? Oh my god, there's so many puddles. Been raining here recently, which is great, but oh my gosh, I don't really want to go in the mud because I don't really want to clean it. See what the traction control does. Oh, it's very, very cautious. What if I go to a 1? Oh my gosh. Oh god. This is pretty silly. Good thing no one at Honda watches these videos. Ugh. Alright, let's see what that TC does now. It's actually not bad. ABS is doing okay in the dirt too. No jump. Sorry, they keep dismantling my jump. I gotta figure something out there. Okay. We survived the dirt, which is really kind of the best you can hope for. Riding a 1000RR in the dirt. I feel good about that. And will it do a wheelie? I mean, that is to say, yes, it will do a wheelie. The thing about this bike, though, is that it doesn't really want to do a wheelie. Bikes are really designed to go fast. They don't want a wheelie, right? If you watched Ari's very comprehensive and good episode of the shop manual about why bikes wheelie, or Wheelies Explained, something like that, he talked about a quote from one Valentino Rossi who said, "Wheelies are the enemy." That is because if the front wheel is too high in the air, then the bike's not accelerating. So, bikes like this, like an RSV4, a Panigale, a GSXR 1000, any sort of like full-blooded superbike, wheelies aren't really what you want. And you can tell from the way that the bike is set up mechanically that the engineers did not want it to do wheelies, which I don't know if I really love on my commute, to be honest, but I appreciate the design and the engineering that goes into it. That's for sure. And I appreciate the noise it makes. Oh my god. So can you back it in? Sort of. You gotta be really hard on the front brake. There we go. Nice, we got a little one. The ABS does allow some slippage in the rear tire, which is pretty darn cool, especially at track speed. But you cannot really adjust, you can't shut off ABS, I should say. You can adjust ABS to one of two settings, I believe, one of which is more lenient than the other. But You can't shut it off and hoon around. But again, you know, not what the bike is for. It's for going fast, not goofing around. Alrighty, time for the U-turn challenge. As I said, not the CBR1000's forte probably, but we'll see how it goes. We got 3 parking spaces here between these Ford Transits, so we're gonna get real close to this one, as close as we can. We're gonna go full lock to the left. Uh-oh, are we gonna make it? Oh, yeah, just made it. Just under 3 parking spaces to turn around. Not gonna ding this bike too much for that, because it's got other things on its mind than doing U-turns, for crying out loud, right? Yeah. Let's see if we can get this pipe to sing a little bit. We're not going to be able to hear it in its true form, but when that valve opens up above 7,000 RPM, when the throttle shuts off, you can hear it sort of like, you can hear it breathing in a way that's pretty special. I mean, are you kidding me? We're going to piss off the neighbors if we keep doing that. So I'm going to shut it down. But you doggy, that's a mean machine. It deserves to be looked at without garbage in the frame. My goodness gracious. It's handsome too, is it not? Okie dokie, time for some Instagram questions. Lots of intelligent questions this time around. You all Daily Rider viewers and followers and question askers really, I don't know, you got your head screwed on straight. I appreciate it. First question is from DLN Sweeney, who asked, does it feel like it has a genuine sprinkling of HRC fairy dust, or mostly like a nostalgia aimed marketing exercise? Good question, right? Is it a paint scheme? Is it a facelift? Is it just sort of supposed to tug at people's heartstrings who remember the CBR900 with the same paint scheme designed by the same guy? And is that it? Is that the end of the story? Well, no, hopefully from this ride you gathered that this is a truly different engineering exercise, and it feels extremely purposeful and sometimes downright vicious, which is good. It's good to see Honda Racing Corporation and Honda in general flex its muscle sometimes, and this is a flex, and I think it's pretty badass actually. Next question is from Moto13N, who asks, why doesn't Honda sell the base RRR in the US? Most people don't realize that the US base models are the same old 1000RR, just with a different color scheme. Yes, this is true. This is something I'm glad that this person pointed out, because I did want to mention it. You can, I believe, as of the publishing of this video, go into a Honda dealership and purchase a 1000RR-R SP, or you can buy a 1000RR. And the RR is the bike that came out in 2017. It's very different. It has all those differences that I talked about in the ergonomics with the gas tank and the foot pegs and the handlebars and all that stuff, not to mention the bore and stroke of the engine, the electronics. It's a completely different motorcycle, which is interesting. And when I put this question, for what it's worth, Moto13N, to Honda about why they don't sell the base RRR in this country, the answer was basically they feel like if someone wants a RRR, they want the full Zoot RRR, which we don't know if that's actually true, because there's no back-to-back testing. But I can understand that, you know, if someone's going to pay whatever, if they were going to pay $25,000 or $26,000 or however much it would cost to get the base RRR, that they might just get the one with the fancy suspension and all the sweet goodies on it. I hope that helps. I don't know. Next question is from Tausif707, who asks, do you feel the integrated winglets working? These little guys that we looked at earlier, right? And no, you do not. Last question is from Jam Bonnie, who asks, keeping food metaphors, would this be like chicken wings that are just way too spicy? Or are they still edible? What heat level of chicken wing is this motorcycle? Yeah, I had a bunch of other questions saved too. Some people sort of saying, like, is it better to be late and comfortable or early with a stiff back? In other words, you want a fast bike that doesn't fit you very well, whatever. Or another question about superbikes being too serious. And I think it all sort of reaches for this thing. So I'm going to do it with the food metaphor, because I think those are more fun. This motorcycle is very, very spicy. Extremely spicy. Probably, if it were a basket of chicken wings, spicier than you actually want to eat. But here's the thing. All your friends are there. They have their baskets of chicken wings, if you know what I mean. And they're like, well, you're going to get that. You got that one. You got the really spicy one. You got the one that they said is kind of dangerous spicy. Wow, that's pretty badass, man. That's gnarly. You ride that basket of chicken wings, even though it makes your eyes water and your tongue burn and you're not really loving it, but the outward appearance of that basket of chicken wings is really something. And I know it's cynical to think that people would just buy this bike for optics only, but I think that there's something to that. And I think I'm the type of person, as you know, as a lover of a Kawasaki Versus 650 or bikes that are sort of comfortable in general. I love horsepower, I really do. But I also love practicality, and I love a basket of chicken wings that is enjoyable at the end of the day. And I've never liked ultra hot wings because I don't really see the point in punishing myself just to see if I can do it. I don't know, I guess, if that makes any sense. And so I don't really like this motorcycle for riding to work. But do I appreciate how hard the chef worked to make a sauce that spicy? Oh my goodness. Do I ever? All right, everybody. Thanks for listening to my rants about chicken sauces and brakes and motorcycles in general. Let's put this sucker on the 2023 Daily Rider leaderboard, and then I can let you go. Stay with me.
Okie dokie, everybody. Here we are at the Daily Rider leaderboard. It is, of course, wiped clean for 2023. The 2022 leaderboard will go here eventually. It's not ready yet. I do apologize. So that means that the CBR1000RR-R SP is both the worst and the best Daily Rider that we've done this year. To give some context, we can look back to 2021 and we can see bikes like the Yamaha R7, the Triumph Daytona 765 Moto 2. I think those are bikes that are comparable to the CBR1000 SP. Also, the BMW S1000RR, which was a 2022 bike. The BMW was arguably a little bit more, I don't know, suited to the street, whether it was a sort of like the clean dash or the heated grips or that kind of thing. And this Honda is very, very aggressive, like I said. So I would put a Yamaha R7 above this. I would put a Triumph Daytona 765 Moto 2, maybe also above it. I don't know. I might put this above the Daytona, although the Daytona's got a good engine. Nice Daily Rider engine. So is this the worst sport bike we've ever tested on Daily Rider? Worse than a Honda CBR1000R? Yeah, probably, for getting to work anyway. There you go, first bike of 2023. Stay tuned for more daily rides coming at you soon. In the meantime, thanks for hanging out. Ride safe. See you soon.
All right, jumping on those brakes. Get a little back in. Not really, because you can't adjust ABS. I don't even know why I'm talking about that right now. So, to answer the question, what the heck does that third R even mean, or the SP?